It is so wonderful to be here. I just want to let you know, I have in my notes, it said wait 60 seconds for applause to die down before speaking. So I don't, please, enough, I'm embarrassed. It is so nice to see everyone here. I am so excited for the opportunity to share some ideas with you. Since we have a very small, intimate crowd, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. If God were your therapist. So I'd like to discuss concepts of happiness, self-esteem, relationships, and see how they all sort of coalesce into one picture. Let's start with the following question. Why do we care if somebody is disrespectful to us? Somebody is rude, impolite, doesn't return our phone call or our text message or our email. Somebody tells us to sit down and be quiet, right? Or you're driving along and you let someone into your lane and you just don't get that little wave and you want to chase that guy back. Just do this. Acknowledge I let you in, right? You know some of you do it, gentlemen. Right? How is it someone else's behavior, someone who we don't even know, may not even like, may never even see again, can cause us to feel an emotional pain, cause us to feel hurt, frustrated, or upset? But moreover, why is it that our response is not always consistent? You know that sometimes you're in the kind of mood, it doesn't matter what anyone says, you wake up in the morning and you're looking for a fight or to cry. Other times, right, the person doesn't say the wrong thing, you're just going to pretend that he did, right? Other times you wake up in the morning and you're feeling emotionally bulletproof. It doesn't matter what anyone says. It doesn't matter what they do. Nothing is going to throw you off your game. So we have two questions on the table. One, why do we care? How is it someone else's behavior, again, someone who we may not even know very well, may not even like or care about, can cause us to feel hurt, frustrated, or embarrassed? Secondly, why is our response not always consistent? And if we understand the mechanism that causes us to care, we can dial it down and never find ourselves hurt, frustrated, or embarrassed by people again. So, how does this work? Human beings are wired by Hashem, wired by God, to have a sense of self-esteem. We're wired to like who we are. Why that's so, if we have time, we'll get to at the end. But for now, let's accept the premise, we're wired by the creator of the universe to like ourselves. Self-esteem, by the way, refers to the degree to which a person likes themselves and feels worthy of good things in life. So we're wired to like ourselves. The million-dollar question becomes, is where does a person go to gain self-esteem? Where do I go to feel good about me? So in a nutshell, here's how it works. There are essentially three forces within the human being. We've got the body, or the guf, the ego, the Yetzer Hara, and our soul, our Yetzer Tov, neshama, conscience, however you want to define it. Body, ego, soul. Very briefly, the body wants to do what feels good. The ego wants to do what looks good. Our soul on a neshama wants to do what truly is good. The alarm clock goes off in the morning, and they all battle it out. Anytime a person overindulges in the body, eats in excess, excess sleep, excess entertainment, temporarily it feels good. How do you feel about yourself afterwards? Blah. And two, with the ego. Anytime you buy something you can't afford, make a joke at someone else's expense, think of the ego, by the way, as a projection machine, an image of how I want the rest of the world to see me, which is pretty ironic with this thing. The job of the ego, by the way, is to sort of protect and project an image of what we're not, but how we want desperately to be seen. And the wider the chasm, the bigger the difference between who I am and this image, the more draining it is. When we want to put on a facade, put on airs, it can be very, very draining. But when a person makes the choice to do what's right and responsible, does what their soul, their neshama, their conscience tells them is right, in spite of what feels good or looks good, that is how we gain self-esteem, with this beautiful gift that we call free will. And only human beings are endowed with free will. Right? A horse, for example, can't look at a bale of hay and think, that looks really good. But I've got this wedding coming up. Maybe Mr. Ed. I know. Do you guys have Mr. Ed here? Nah. Reference from the 50s, sorry. Right? Only human beings are capable of feeling like doing one thing and instead choose to do something else. And that's a Torah definition of freedom. As Rabbi Noach Weinberg of blessed memory used to say, the secular definition of freedom is being able to do whatever you feel like doing. The Torah definition of freedom is being able to do what you want to do in spite of what you feel like doing. That's real freedom. And that is how we gain self-esteem. And as we're going to see very quickly, that's how we gain emotional health. So very nice. We understand how we gain self-esteem from rising above our nature, doing what's right and responsible in spite of what feels good or looks good. What does this have to do with whether or not I'm annoyed or frustrated by other people? And the answer is as follows. We said, remember, that human beings are wired to like who we are. We're wired to have a sense of self-esteem. So if I'm making poor choices and I don't like me very much, I lack self-respect, which we'll use synonymously with self-esteem for now, right? Where then do I turn to feel good about me? The rest of the world. I demand that you like me. I insist that you respect me. And if I don't get it, what's my response? Anger, frustration, resentment, or maybe turn inward. Guilt, depression, anxiety. Right? See, I need to like me. But if I don't feed myself by making good choices, that makes me inherently dependent upon you. Right? You can see how precarious this makes my emotional health. Because my whole self-image is based on how you perceive me. I'm like a leaf in the wind. You smile, I feel good. You say something mean, I feel less good. And the more self-esteem I have, right, the less I care what you think. Now, make no mistake. It's not about not caring what people think per se. But I'm not bothered if you don't like me. I don't view your not liking me or your treating me disrespectfully as a defect or deficiency within me. I'm happy to insist that it's your own problem. Right? Look, most people like people to like them. Right? When I'm done speaking, do I like a standing ovation? Absolutely, of course. The question is, if I don't get it, will I become upset, frustrated, angry? I personally think, why risk it, but okay. From this, we learn an amazing thing. And that is that other people do not upset us. Other people do not bother us. Rather, it's the meaning we attach to the situation that determines how we feel. Now, make no mistake, there are people that make it easy for us to become upset and frustrated. We call them friends and family. But ultimately, how I feel about the situation has everything to do with how I feel about me. Let me give you an analogy. Let's say you're driving along and somebody cuts you off on the road. First, by a show of hands, who here speeds up to see what that person looks like? Some honest people? Who's going to bother us more? Nice little old lady driving like this on the way to her own Levia. Or a young guy driving with his baseball cap on backwards, beer bottle in one hand, cigarette in the other, steering with his knee. Who's going to bother us more? Shout it out. Old lady or young guy? Young guy. I know there's always someone that says old ladies because you shouldn't be on the road. I get that. I used to live in Florida, so I understand the concept. We're more bothered by the young guy than the old lady. Why? Because we presume that the nice little lady just probably didn't see our car, right? Let alone the dashboard of her own car. But the young guy did it to me because he doesn't. Rah. Look at the insanity of this. You're driving along, then you almost get into an accident, then you speed up, risking your life to see what this person looks like, to see how mad you should be. Who's the crazy one? See, the truth is, everyone should get put into the nice little lady category, but it's our own ego that gets inflamed and engaged. And when that happens, we take it personally. And when you take things personally, you're sunk. That's what the ego does. It makes us literally egocentric. The world revolves around me. Everything is about me. Two people whispering in the corner, it's got to be about me. No, it probably is since I'm up here, but. Which is why children, for example, right? They by definition are egocentric, which is fine, they're supposed to be. Right? And when their parents, let's say, get divorced, who do they blame? Right? They very often blame themselves. Right? In the interest of fair disclosure, I happen to come from a broken home. But I mean that literally. A tree fell on my roof growing up. And then my parents got divorced, but it turns out it's my sister's fault, so I'm okay. Worked that through with my therapist. Now, this is an amazingly freeing concept, that we realize that our emotional health, right, our happiness, the quality of relationships hinges not on circumstance but on choice. As I talked about briefly last night, and I know you all took copious notes, right, self-esteem and the ego are inversely related. It's like a seesaw. When one goes up, the other goes down. The more self-esteem I have, the smaller the ego. Less self-esteem I have, the bigger the ego. The ego blocks perspective. Perspective is our reality. Our perspective is the ability to see and accept and respond to our world. That is, in another word, sanity. When a person loses his sanity, it means he's lost perspective. So the more egocentric I am, again, follow this through. Poor choices, big ego, block perspective, go crazy. Better choices, more responsible, rise above my nature. Ego shrinks, see more clearly, better relationships, feel happier. Emotional clarity, perspective, it's an amazing thing. At any point, at any time, a person wants to change the quality of their lives, they need only change the quality of their choices. Hashem creates a level playing field, which is why we can read about people in the magazines and see people on television and hear about celebrities that go in and out of rehab. They're handed everything under the sun. We think, why are they so miserable? Why are they unhappy? Why are they trying to kill themselves quickly or slowly with drugs and alcohol? Because our happiness, our relationships, our mental health is not contingent on conditions or circumstances or on what we have, but on what we do with what we have. Hashem creates a level playing field. Free will is the great equalizer. That'd be a nice way to end, but we still have 20 minutes left. Okay, let's move out here. It's so much more intimate with 4,000 people when you can come out. Pirkei Avos, Ethics of the Fathers, talks about 4 desirable traits that we would all ascribe to. Talks about who is wealthy, who is honored, who is wise, who is strong. Right? We won't go into all of them, but it's, according to the rest of the world, right? Who is a strong person? Rest of the world. Person who can lift weights. According to the Torah, who is strong? Person who can rise above their nature. According to the rest of the world, who is wealthy? Right? A person who has a lot of money. According to the Torah, who is wealthy? Person who's happy with his lot. By the way, I'll share with you, you have to know your audience. My family and I were at a Shabbaton some time ago, and my son was complaining that his brother had gotten a bigger cookie than he did. So I see the rabbi walk by, and I said, here's my chance to show him how brilliant his scholar in residence is. So I kneeled down beside my son. I said, sweetheart, it says in Pirkei Avos, Ethics of the Fathers, wisdom of the sages, who is wealthy? He who is happy with his lot. And he looks at his cookie, he looks at me, and he says, I don't have a lot, I have a little. I was not invited back to that community. All right, there's always South Africa. And again, who is honored according to the rest of the world? The person who has maybe, those other things, who's strong and well, according to the Torah, who's honored, a person who honors others, and so on. Who here wants to think of the striking distinction between the Torah definition and the rest of the world definition between these traits? Right? It's quite intuitive when we think about it. Right? The rest of the world is based on contrast and comparison. I can feel good about me if I show up with a room of losers, people who are dumber, less intelligent, have less money, less strong than me. Everything's contrast and comparison. God says, no, it's self-growth, not self-comparison. You can't feel good about yourself simply by hanging out with people who are less off than you. Because what happens to your quote-unquote self-esteem if you build an entire self-image around the secular definition of these traits, and you show up in a room with somebody who's smarter than you or wealthier than you? Where does your self-esteem go? Poof, because it really wasn't self-esteem. It was an inflated ego built around this image, which is why, for example, you have somebody who's a great tennis player. Their entire world is created around this facade that I'm a tennis player who's fantastic. And they're playing tennis and they get a bad call. What's their response? They can't help but become angry, because that's their whole world. Hashem tells us, if you want to feel good about yourself, you want to feel strong, you want to be honored, you want to be wealthy, it's all about the choices you make. not about anyone or anything else. Even a secular society that celebrates a mindset of contrast and comparison is doomed to fail. You know what's fascinating? The research shows in the Olympics, for example, you've got 3 places, gold, silver, and bronze, that the silver medalist is unhappy and sometimes certainly less happy than the bronze medalist, and often, period, just unhappy for winning the silver. Why? That's right. The silver guy's thinking, oh man, this close to being on the box of Wheaties. 0.00001 seconds away from the gold. What's the bronze guy thinking? Whew, almost with those losers over there. Right? Even a mindset that celebrates contrast and comparison is doomed to fail. Chazal say, the rabbis say, envy rots the bones. Because if I'm focused on what you have, if I'm jealous of what you have, I want what you have, I'll never maximize me. As my brother says, we all have a unique spiritual DNA. We all have a reason, as the Rebbetzin spoke about last night. We all have even identical twins that on the same fingerprints. We're all here for a specific reason and a purpose. Yeah? And if we don't try to maximize that and we're focused on other people, we'll never actualize ourselves. What's the opposite of simcha, of joy, of happiness? Depression. Some of the deeper sources explain depression as a taste of death. Why? Because in 120 plus years, well, I've driven on some of these roads, maybe sooner for some, but sorry about that. Our soul will separate from the body. The neshama and the body will separate. Right? And we're largely, to some extent, static. This is the world of doing, that is the world of being. The feeling of depression that we get here is when we're not moving our bodies, we're not living and moving forward in our lives. That's that feeling of separation. And how do people describe depression? Going nowhere in life. Everything's futile. Feeling like I'm on a treadmill. And there's no worse feeling, fewer worse feelings than the feeling that what you're doing doesn't matter. It's simply futile. Because the soul and the body are separated. The job of the soul is to invigorate the body and move us forward. Both the soul and the body are in some sense purified. But when we're not moving our lives forward, we feel depressed. Depression is not a symptom of not moving lives forward. It is a fail-safe mechanism created by Hashem to wake us up. If a person didn't have physical pain receptors, for example, and put their hand on a hot stove, the consequences would be most obvious. And 2, we have emotional pain to alert us to the damage of what it is we're doing when we're acting irresponsibly. So when we talk about being responsible, making good choices, there are 2 different major categories. One is within the situation, am I choosing to do what's right instead of what feels good or looks good? And the overall trajectory of my life. Am I moving my life forward in a meaningful, purposeful direction? It's always the person that's going nowhere in life that's the quickest to complain about slow-moving traffic. Right? Because that person is so easily frustrated, so easily bothered, so easily annoyed at themselves, and they take it out on you and the rest of the world. But if you want to be happy, if you want to be emotionally solvent, if you want to enjoy good relationships, it requires you taking action that's responsible. It's an amazingly freeing concept that our emotional health, to a large extent, we're painting with a broad brush here, to a large extent is contingent on the quality of our choices. And the research shows what Chazal told us thousands of years ago, that the worst thing a person can do who feels depressed is pull the covers over their head. But that's exactly what people want to do. That's our nature. But our job as Jews, as human beings, is to rise above our nature. And when we make a decision to move our lives forward and to invest in ourselves, nothing is more invigorating. Nothing is more exciting. We bounce out of bed with such a passion, such an excitement because we have a purpose, because we have a direction. and because we have a plan. Now, low self-esteem produces a variety of different personality types. We'll talk about just 4 for now. They're the major categories. By the way, let me just say this. Baruch Hashem, I've written a number of books. One is called Real Power, and we made it available for Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, completely free. You can just go onto Amazon and type in Real Power, David Lieberman, and download it for free. It's the Kindle version, but you can download it to any device, to your smartphone, maybe your not smartphone, your computer, whatever it is, and completely free to Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. And it talks a little bit about what we're speaking about now, and it's just, well, it's free, so I don't need much of a selling, how hard do you have to sell something for free? But for those listening to this after Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, it is a wonderful, wonderful book. Well worth the $12.95. It will change your life. You can fire your therapist. Yes. Can't wait to see the complaint letters that come in. Where are we? Personality types. So, and again, we're painting with a broad brush. There are many asterisks, many variables, but given the intimate setting, we can't speak individually here. Though I can call a few of you and talk about your psychoses if you'd like. I've spotted you. So, you have high self-esteem and a small ego, right? That's the healthiest person. And again, self-esteem is not an all-in-one proposition. We'll get to that in about 5 minutes. But most healthy model is high self-esteem, small ego. Then you've got low self-esteem and a big ego, right? That's a person that's sort of egocentric, arrogant, full of bravado, and so on. You also have what we call low self-esteem and a dented ego, right? That's not the person that is so assertive or aggressive. This is what we call the doormat mentality, the perpetual people pleaser. The person that doesn't do what's right because they want to do what's right, rather they give to avoid feeling guilt or because they can't stand up to themselves or for themselves. Yeah. So again, they don't give as much as they allow themselves to be robbed, right? To assuage these feelings of guilt or inadequacy. But this person on the surface can look like a very humble person. But in reality, they're not truly giving. Giving is when you have a choice. I can give or not give. I do what's responsible. If I don't have a choice, I feel I've got to go ahead and do this, you're going to be mad at me or I'll feel guilty. That's not a choice. Right? And then you have something called the avoidant personality, but it's a very small subset, so we'll skip that for now. So basically, is that you've got these personality types, and there's a beautiful Hasidic saying that says a person should carry 2 pieces of paper in his pocket at all time. One that says, the world is created only for me. The other that says, I'm nothing but dust. The trick, it notes, is knowing which piece of paper to pull out when. Yeah. So from these personality types, we can sort of gain an insight into how to tell if somebody has high or low self-esteem. Now, this is not a perfect test, and you shouldn't walk around, with a clipboard thinking, this person likes themselves, ooh, not this person. But it can be a useful tool in terms of just generally gauging a sense of somebody's emotional health. To be clear, self-esteem, once again, is not an all-in-one proposition. It runs along a spectrum with many shades of gray. And 2, we have what we call a mood. Sometimes people in a good mood, worse mood. So we certainly can't judge people, right? The Torah tells us, right, you cannot judge a person till you walked a mile in their Crocs. That's Art Scroll, by the way. By the way, I've got my own reason, my own thinking as to why you shouldn't judge someone until you walked a mile in their shoes, because this way, you're a mile away and you've got their shoes, right? But is there a way to tell if somebody has high self-esteem or not? Now, I want you to know, I've been asking this question, and just given the time, I guess we can take a couple of shout-outs, but in the 15 years or so I've been asking this question, no one has ever gotten the right answer. People have gotten close, and I've offered them, various trips and vacations. Anyone want to hazard a guess to how you tell if someone has high self-esteem? After I say no one's gotten in 15 years, right? Yes? Okay, so what this woman is, the question is, or what she's saying is, where are my books and tapes available for sale? So you can find them at, bookstores, Judaica, online. Okay, that really wasn't her question. So what she said was, basically what I said. You see if their response is, kind and consistent and so on. The problem is you could get a false positive. Maybe this is a doormat mentality. The person just wants to be the people pleaser. I don't want to make any waves. You want a kidney? Here you go. You want another one? Here you go. You want a third one? Hold on. Let me get one. So here's how you tell. And again, we're not talking about walking around judging people. You can't judge people. We don't know. We don't even know our own madrega, our own spiritual level, to some extent. We won't know what was really within our grasp, what was without of our grasp, what lay just beyond, and so on. So we certainly can't judge other people, but it does come in handy in some respects. And you have to look at two things. You have to look at my tape series for $79.95. That would be wrong, right? Okay. You have to look at two things. One, how the person treats other people and how they treat themselves. See, if I treat you well and myself poorly, that's a doormat mentality. I treat you poorly, myself well, that's the arrogant, self-centered mentality. If I have respect for you and for me, that's the healthiest mentality. Right? You give what you've got. You give love. You give respect. If you don't have it, what do you have to give? Once again, Rabbi Noah Weinberg of blessed memory used to say, if you don't love you, don't love me. Because a person that doesn't love themselves has a very hard time giving love, showing respect. How do you do it? You give what you've got. But I will tell you, we're going to talk more about this, I think, with Rabbi Pliskin. One of the hallmarks of building self-esteem are those very acts of showing respect, of instilling in yourself a sense of humility and giving to other people by choice. Again, giving because you don't feel you have a choice does nothing to enhance our self-esteem. Giving because we know what's right and it's proper, we can choose to say yes, we can choose to say no, and we do the right thing. Right? That is amazingly freeing and infuses us with an unwavering sense of self-esteem. So, we said that self-esteem is not an all-in-one proposition. With every generation, tell me if you agree, we seem to be getting less and less emotionally solvent. Right? The research bears out that 1/4 of the population suffers from emotional illness. 67% of the population is overweight or obese. That number grows with every new statistic. 1/3 of the population suffers with persistent pain so bad that they need medication. Our ability to deal with challenges, heartache, struggles, much less life itself, has become crippled. Why? Answer is as follows. And by the way, I do think there's a confluence of a number of issues, but I'd like to share with you what seems to be, according to research, the most prevalent driving force. As technological advancements make our lives increasingly comfortable, safe, and easy, we've gotten it into our heads that the path to happiness is through comfort. The more comfortable things are, the happier I should be. Right? But we now know that happiness, self-esteem, emotional health comes from what's doing what's right, not what's easy or makes us look good. So if we continue to go for the low-hanging fruit and go for what's easy and comfortable, we short-circuit our ability to gain self-esteem. Yeah. Self-esteem requires us doing what's not easy. Right? Today, it's amazing the luxuries we live in. Chair's not comfortable, get another one. Too hot, turn on the air conditioner. Too cold, turn the heat. Spouse is bothering you, get a new one. Please don't go home to your spouse and give them the bad news. We live in a disposable society that says, if it's hard, I want out. Our ability to put in a modicum of effort, even for something which we greatly desire and want, is growing more and more foreign. Once again, Rabbi Noah Weinberg used to say, the opposite of pleasure is not pain. It's comfort. Real pleasure is living life, engaging in life. It requires pain and effort to get through to the pleasure. Comfort is the opposite of pleasure. It's divorcing yourself from life. It's not living life. And there's only so much pleasure we can extract from something that's merely comfortable, because what Hashem does to keep us moving in the right direction is He attaches pleasure to meaning. That means the more meaningful something is, the more pleasure we can extract from it. The less meaning, the less pleasure. So if I'm going with something that's only comfortable, this inherently void of meaning, in which case it's inherently void of pleasure. Right? There's only so long you can sit on the couch and eat cheese doodles and watch TV before you go mad. Rabbi Weinberg asked this class once, he says, who do you think is your parents' greatest source of pleasure? And the kid said, well, me. And he said, who do you think is your parents' greatest source of pain? He said, my sister. We live in an age where people want things comfortable, easy, stress-free. The problem is the people that try to get rid of the stress are the most neurotic. Because real pleasure, real mental health requires, as I said last night, an allegiance to reality. It requires a dedication to the truth at all costs. And God is reality. It's like a person playing a sport. You can play a sport, you can get beaten up, bruised, and battered. It's like, your arm's hanging here, it's over there. Right? You don't feel the pain when you're living life. Sitting on the sidelines, everything bothers you. Sitting in the bleachers, hot dog tastes funny, guy behind you sneezing, maybe it'll rain, seat's not comfortable. Right? There is no real pleasure, so all you feel is the pain. We have no perspective. I know somebody that takes Concerta, which is a medication for ADHD, perfectly fine, great, helps to keep him focused during the day. He also takes Ambien, a sleep aid to fall asleep at night. And I asked him once, I said, why do you take Ambien? I said, you don't really have a sleeping problem. He said, I know, but otherwise it takes me 15, 20 minutes to fall asleep. I said, how lazy are you exactly? But this is the mindset. He doesn't want to spend 15 minutes falling asleep. There's a product on the market, at least by us, called Tylenol Go Tabs. What does it do that regular Tylenol doesn't do? Is that you can take it without water, just chew it up fast. And their selling point is, in case you can't find a cup of water. Really? They cater to people's fear of being in pain, of being uncomfortable. And they show us that we can simply be out of pain, and this is the way to go. And if you look at, a friend of mine, Rabbi Yitzi Feldheim, gives a great example. He talks about, the retirement mentality and what people look for and what they talk about when they want to retire. And you see the ads and you see them talking. And some pictures of hammocks and lemonade. Right? Just want to be able to chill, to veg, to do nothing. What are they really saying? I just want to be out of pain. They've abandoned even the possibility, the potential of real pleasure. After working for 40, 50, 60 years, right? They've abandoned the possibility they could actually enjoy real meaning. They just want to be out of pain. And today, people have such a reflex for work, for effort. And if you look at the previous generations, they were healthier to a large extent because life was difficult. And guess what? Life is difficult. If you start with the premise that life is easy, you're going to be quite disappointed. And one of the issues, it's not a talk on chinuch, not a talk on parenting, but one of the challenges parents have today is raising children who are emotionally resilient, who are able to deal with life's bumps and scrapes and bruises, and they're trying to spare them from every type of inconvenience. But the truth is, we build resiliency from facing life responsibly, not from trying to escape from it. We've got about 5 minutes? Okay, I'm sorry, I can't see so well. 3 minutes? 5 minutes? 10 minutes? An hour and a half. Okay. As I said, there's no status quo in nature. People are either growing or decaying. We're either living or dying. We're meant to move. We're meant to be responsible. You all here today have taken an amazing step in that direction. You coming here to grow, to learn, to be together. That is amazingly powerful. It can be amazingly transformative. But if you want to maximize it, it requires us to make different choices. There's no way to get around it. People want the world to change without them changing, right? You ever hear the idea that, by the way, a person that wins the lottery ends up more miserable than before they won the money? You ever hear that idea? It's just called the lottery curse. Here's what the research shows. A person that wins $1 million or more has a higher statistical rate of divorce, drunken driving, bankruptcy, and something else. Of being able to remember 4 things. The money, in a large extent, doesn't do them any good. All it was an opportunity for them to make lousier choices faster and easier than they could before. It was a test and they failed. I know a few of you thinking, test me. Right? Circumstances will come and go. They will never change how you feel about yourself. Win $1 million, you'll be in a good mood. Lose $1 million, you'll be in a less good mood. Ultimately, our ability to enjoy a quality of life, to feel good about ourselves, to enhance our self-esteem and the quality of relationships comes down to the quality of our choices. And if you make a commitment to make a different choice, even a small choice, and begin to put a plan in action to move forward in some way in that direction, you cannot help but infuse yourself with an amazing sense of self-esteem. At the end of the day, the quality of our lives comes down to the quality of our choices. If we accept responsibility for the quality of our lives, nothing can stop us. And if we don't, nothing can move us. And with that, I thank you for listening.